Isaiah chapter 14, 1 through 9. Return, O Israel, to the Lord your God, for you have stumbled because of your iniquity. Take words with you and return to the Lord. Say to God, take away all guilt. Accept that which is good, and we will offer the fruit of our lips. Assyria shall not save us. We will not ride upon horses. We will say no more, our God, to the work of our hands, in you the orphan finds mercy. I will heal their disloyalty. I will love them freely, for my anger has turned from them. I will be like the dew to Israel. They shall blossom like the lily. They shall strike root like the forests of Lebanon. Their shoots shall spread out. Their beauty shall be like the olive tree, and their fragrance like that of Lebanon. They shall again live beneath my shadow. They shall flourish as a garden. They shall blossom like the vine. Their fragrance shall be like the wine of Lebanon. O Ephraim, what have I to do with idols? It is I who look after you. I am like evergreen cypress. Your fruit from me. Those who are wise understand these. Those who are discerning know them. For the ways of God are right, and the upright walk in them. Transgressors stumble.
God, let my heart be good soil, open to the seed of your word. God, let my heart be good soil, where love is grown and peace is understood. When my heart is hard, break the stone away. When my heart is cold, warm it with a day. When my heart is lost, lead me on your way. God, let my heart, God, let my heart, God, let my heart be good soul.
What an image for us this morning. Dew. God is like the dew on the grass. That doesn't sell in Seattle very well. Cindy was trying to culture some curly hair. She has some wonderful, naturally curly hair, and she tried to do it for a while, but she said Seattle just killed her. I mean, it was just so hard on that humidity to keep it going. It just took the curl out. Took it out or put it in? Put it in. The other way around, yes. Just made it crazy. And then me, on Sunday mornings, I go to the garden, and I've got to change my shoes after going to the garden because I love to water the garden, and I like to work in the garden. And walking across that grass, on Sunday morning, if I put my Sunday shoes on, they're going to be wet the whole day, So, dew. How do we sell this thing? Well, in the Bible is not written in Seattle, right? We know that. It wasn't written in Seattle. It was not written in 2023 in our era, but in an agricultural era. And let me tell you, in Israel, they had dry seasons like we do. And without the dew, they could not have survived. They needed the dew on those plants every morning. That's the way they got through the dry season. And this is a picture from a farm in Israel today that has learned a new technique on how to capture dew in the morning. And so this way they don't have to water those plants during the dry season because they're able to catch that dew. It reminds me of a story of Edward Abbey. Do you know maybe who he is? Wrote Desert Solitaire. When I was a college kid, everybody read Desert Solitaire. It was like this great book, and it was a wonderful book. And he, early on in his life, when he was just about ready to get married, he decided to take 8 weeks and go out into the desert by himself. And so he went to the store right by the desert, and he said, well, I need just a little bit of supplies here, and I need a gallon of water. And the guy said, what are you going to do? And he said, I plan to spend 8 weeks in the desert. He said, well, you're not going to make it very long with a gallon of water. And he said, well, we'll see. And he went out there, and he didn't just make it 2 days or 3 days. He made it 9 weeks. And he would have made it a lot longer, but he had to go home to get married. It was his wedding that week. By the way, he was married 4 times, and I think partly because he would go out on these excursions all by himself and never come back. But the way he survived was he had a tarp. He put a rock, or he dug a hole in the desert. He put a rock in the middle and a glass underneath, and every morning he was able to collect the dew from that night before, and he was able to stay alive because of that dew, that regular, persistent dew that God gives us every day in some of the craziest times in our life. And so I have to just say, I used to be a big Mountain Dew fan. I almost hate to say this, but when I was a youth pastor, I used to, every morning, I would go to the store, like the convenience store, and I would fill up a 64-ounce dew glass, and I'd drink that in the morning. Can you believe it? Oh, terrible for you. But sometimes you got to do the dew. That's all I got to say. That's all I got to say. But I want you to think about dry seasons in your life, or dry times in your spiritual journeys, and what feeds you, what motivates you, what keeps you going, what keeps you connected to God, that river of love, that loving tenderness. How do we stay, connected? My mom, when we were moved to Rapid City, we moved from Wagner, South Dakota, population 1,600, to Rapid City, about 50,000. We thought that was like the hugest city in the world. And it was a very difficult time for our family. My sister, Rachel, had just died in a car accident. We moved that next year. Dad was wiped out from ministry. He was a little burnt, I think he would have admitted. And they were struggling, Mom and Dad. She shared this with me. She said, couples, when they lose a son or a daughter or a sibling, they struggle because they grieve so much differently. We all grieve so differently, and you want to lean on each other, but you really can't because you need someone else to lean on, and they didn't have anybody. They didn't find anybody, and so I remember some of those arguments, and it seemed like they always had the arguments in a Volkswagen Bug when I was in the back seat. Mom and Dad would start having it out. Oh, they were ugly. I hated I was almost happier when they were arguing. It was the silence in between that was just unbearable. And Mom said they were struggling. And Mom, when we moved there, she was a title teacher, so she taught Title I education, early education. And she usually got a job, but she could not find a job in Rapid City. And so we waited and waited. And here's one of the reasons she couldn't find a job. We didn't know we were moving until it was too late to go and get a job. So she was late in the job market at the time. And so we were nervous. We had to have this money. There was no way we would get through without 2 incomes. And so finally, she got a job offer in scenic South Dakota. So I think there's a picture. This is a lively picture of scenic South Dakota right here. Population, it depends. They argue a little bit. 46 or 49, depending on whether you count ghosts, because it is kind of a ghost town. It's a little town, and it's right on the heart. It's near interior South Dakota too, which is right where the Badlands are. So it's right on the edge of the Badlands. You take Highway 44 from Rapid City and you head east, and you will get there. A desolate road, Highway 44. And so Mom got this job teaching country school, a 1-year country school. The last country school in South Dakota was in Scenic, and she was teaching it. Wasn't too happy about doing it, partly because it was a 38-mile trip one way, and then 38 miles back. Not so bad on a good day, right? But when winter hit in South Dakota, there were no trees on that road. It was barren, and it would just drift. And I don't know how many times we would get a call from Mom. And by the way, so the school system was in Wall, South Dakota. They lived on Interstate 90. And so if there was a storm on Interstate 90, they always cleared that baby, and so they always had school, but they never thought about interior. So they always had school, and Mom always had to drive that road. And I don't know how many times she would call from a farmer's house and say, I'm stuck, can't get to school, and I can't get back. I guess I'll just have to stay overnight here and see if I can make it the next day if they clear the roads. That happened probably 5 or 6 times that winter. It was a tough winter. And it was tough economically for us. I remember that summer, every summer we worked in Rapid City. All the kids came and worked. We finally could get a job, and we worked all sorts of jobs, and half of our income had to go to the house because we just had to make it. And so half of our income went there, half of it went for clothes. So it was a tough time for us. We're all grieving. And I asked Mom years later how she got through it. And I said, how did you and Dad get through that time of being apart? And she said, every morning, my dad would write a little note and stick it on the steering wheel of the Volkswagen Bug before she left. And she said those notes, and they were kind of stupid sometimes, or it was just sometimes just a heart, or I love you, it was simple stuff, it was just do, really, just everyday do. But she said it was those notes that got her through. And my dad used to send us notes in college. I have to be honest, sometimes I didn't even read them because there was a check in there too. And I just wanted the check. Isn't that terrible? But that's true. It was due too, and we enjoyed that. But I never really realized the power of those notes until Mom told me that story. And then one year I moved from Vermilion, South Dakota to Sioux Falls, South Dakota, Hilltop United Methodist Church, and just a brand new pastor there. And as soon as I got there, first day in the office manager, she said, you got to go see Ruth Barnes. She's been dying to see you. She wants to see you. She wants to talk to you. And I thought, oh boy, what is she mad about? And I didn't really even want to go, but I did. And I got there, and there was Ruth, and in her hand was a letter. And I knew the handwriting of that letter. Ruth Barnes went to high school with my dad in Harrisburg, South Dakota. And when she was about 55, her son died in a motorcycle accident. My dad had lost his daughter in not a motorcycle, a car accident. And he had written her a note. And that was 25 years later that I showed up, and she still had it. And there were tears on that letter, just a lot of them, full of them. And she said, my dad writing to her was as if a sibling were writing to her because he had gone through the same thing she did. His words came like grace, like dew on the grass for her. It got her through the tough times. And she would read it, she said, 7 years later, 15 years later, she still read that letter. And then I began to realize the power of small things done consistently in love towards others. We kind of think sometimes, right, that we've got to just hit the home run. We're home run people. We don't. Little things done consistently in relentless love does give us grace, does move the needle, does make this world a better place. And so this morning, I encourage you, who could you? What could you do? How could you be due this week? What could you start doing regularly? One small thing, regularly, consistently, relentlessly, that might just help someone get through that dark night. All the people said.
We don't have words for this on the screen, but I think most of you will know it. Leaning, safe and secure from all